Let's get started with chapter 5 of The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson. When I started to read this chapter, The Failure to Learn to Make a Living, without being political or any type of connotation other than what you will receive when I say these three names, will prove Dr. Woodson's point. And those three names that I want to set forward before getting into the chapter would be, first of all, Clarence Thomas. The second name is Tim Scott. And the last name that I want to mention is Ben Carson. In my estimation, they prove Dr. Woodson's thesis. Let's get into the program. The greatest indictment of such education as Negroes have received, however, is that they have thereby learned little as to making a living, the first essential in civilization. Rural Negroes have always known something about agriculture, and in a country where land is abundant, they have been able to make some sort of living on the soil, even though they have not always employed scientific methods of farming. In industry, where the competition is keener, however, what the Negro has learned in school has had little bearing on the situation as pointed out above. The Negroes of today are unable to employ one another, and the whites are inclined to call on Negroes only when workers of their own race have been taken care of. For the solution of this problem, the miseducated Negro has offered no remedy whatever. What Negroes are now being taught does not bring their minds into harmony with life as we must face it. When a Negro student works his way through college by polishing shoes, he does not think of making a special study of the science underlying the production and the distribution of leather and its products that he may someday figure in this sphere. Wow. A white professor of a university recently resigned his position to become rich by running a laundry for Negroes in a southern city. A Negro college instructor would have considered such a suggestion an insult. The so-called education of Negro college graduates leads them to throw away opportunities which they have and go in quest of those which they do not find. For example, a year or two after the author, Dr. Woodson, left Harvard, he found out West, a schoolmate who was studying wool. How did you happen to go into this sort of thing? Dr. Woodson inquired. His people, the former replied, had some experience in wool, and in college he prepared for this work. On the contrary, the author studied Aristotle, Plato, Mauricio of Padua, Tarcisius Rathbertus when he was in college. His friend who studied wool, however, is now independently rich and has had sufficient leisure to enjoy the cultural side of life, which his knowledge of the science underlying his business developed. But the author has had to make his living by begging for a struggling cause. This observer was reminded of this young woman Soon after, when there came to visit him a friend who succeeded in mastering everything taught in high school at that time and later distinguished himself in college. This highly educated man brought with him a complaint against life. Having had extreme difficulty in finding an opportunity to do what he was trained to do, he has thought several times of committing suicide. A friend encouraged this despondent man to go ahead and do it. The sooner the better. The food and the air which he is now consuming may then go to keep alive someone who is in touch with life and able to grapple with life with its problems. This man has been educated away from the fruit stand. If we invest our money in some enterprise of our own, he said, those in charge will misuse or misappropriate it. I have learned from my study of economics that we had just as well keep on throwing it away. Upon investigation, however, it was discovered that this complainant and most others like him have never invested anything in any of the Negro enterprises, although they have tried to make a living by exploiting them. But they feel a bit guilty on this account. And when they have some apparent ground for fault finding, they try to satisfy their conscience with all but condemns them for their suicidal course of getting all they can out of the race while giving nothing back to it. You read such headlines as Greatest Negro Business Fails, Negro Bank Robbed by Its Officers, and The Twilight of Negro Business. The miseducated Negroes then stand by saying, I told you so. Negroes cannot run business. My professors pointed that out to me years ago when I studied economics in college. And I never intend to put my money in any Negro enterprise. The Negro businessman then has not failed so much as he has failed to get the support of Negroes who should be mentally developed sufficiently to see the wisdom of supporting such enterprises. The impatient, highly educated Negroes, therefore, say that since under the present system of capitalism, the Negro has no chance to toil upward in the economic sphere. The only hope for for bettering his condition in this respect is through socialism, the overthrow of the present economic regime, and the inauguration of popular control of resources and agencies which are now being operated for personal gain. This thought is gaining ground among Negroes in this country and is rapidly sweeping them into the ranks of what are commonly known as communists. Mercy. Have mercy, Lord. The Negro, therefore, like all other oppressed people, must learn to do the so-called impossible. Amen. If the highly educated Negro would forget most of the untried theories taught him in school, if he could see through the propaganda which has been instilled into his mind under the pretext of education, if he would fall in love with his own people and begin to sacrifice for their uplift, if the highly educated Negro would do these things, he could solve some of the problems now confronting the race. Instead of requiring the firm to pay her, she should pay for her training. Negro business today then finds the miseducated employees its heaviest burden. Thousands of graduates of white business schools spend years in establishments and undergoing apprenticeship without pay and rejoice to have the opportunity thus to learn how to do things. Graduates of our business schools lack the courage to throw themselves upon their resources and work for a commission. The large majority of them want to be sure to receiving a certain amount at the end of the week of the month. They do not seem to realize that the great strides in business have been made by paying men according to what they do. Persons with false impressions of life are not good representatives of schools or business administration. Recently, one of the large insurance companies selected for special training in this line 15 college graduates of our accredited institutions and financed their special training in insurance. Only one of the number, however, rendered efficient service in this field. They all abandoned the effort after a few days' trial and accepted work in hotels and with the Pullman Company. And they went into teaching or something else with a fixed stipend until they could enter upon the practice of professions. The thought of the immediate reward, short-sightedness, and the lack of vision and courage to struggle and win the fight made them failures to begin with. He has apparently read his race out of that sphere. And with the exception of what illiterate Negroes can do blindly, the field is left wide open for foreign exploitation. Foreigners see this opportunity as they reach our shores and begin to manufacture and sell to Negroes, especially such things as caps, neckties, house dresses, which may be produced at a small cost and under ordinary circumstances. The main problem with the Negro in this field, however, is salesmanship. That is where he is weak. If he cannot proceed according to the methods of the gigantic corporation about which he reads in books, he does not know how to take hold of things and organize the communities of the poor along the lines of small businesses. Such training is necessary, for the large majority of Negroes conducting enterprises have not learned business methods and do not understand the possibilities of the field in which they operate. One of them, for example, had waited on a white business club and been passing the members a box of cigars or bringing a pitcher of water. When they began to discuss business, however, he had to leave the room. About the only time he could see them in action was when they were at play, indulging in extravagances which the Negro learned to take up before he could afford them. They are usually operating in the dark by a hit or miss method. Too often, when the founder dies, then the business dies with him, or it goes to pieces soon after he passes away. For nobody has come into sufficiently close contact with him to learn the secret success of his business in spite of his handicaps. All of the failures of the Negro business, however, are not due to troubles from without. Often, the Negro businessman lacks common sense. He has the finest car, the most expensive dress, the best summer home, and so far outdistances his competitors in society that they often set to work in childlike fashion to bring him down to their level.